Welcome to Wise Move, where we dive into real estate, real life, and real wisdom. I'm your host, Meredith Buckland, a top realtor in the greater Atlanta area with over 12 years of experience. I have had the privilege to help hundreds of clients navigate their moves successfully while gaining a wealth of wisdom along the way. As Einstein said, wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. So join me as I connect with clients, colleagues, and industry experts to discuss market trends, share valuable advice, along with real-life stories that can help make every move a wise move. Welcome to Wise Move. I am here with Mike Lacy. He is a top producing realtor in the greater Atlanta area, and he has a variety of background and experience that he's going to bring to us today, including house hacking, rentals, and flips. And I just want to dive deeper into this conversation with you, Mike, and I'm so glad you agreed to come and join me as another colleague in the area of real estate and just educate our audience on some of the possibilities of real estate and investment and house hacking and all that goes into it. So welcome to Wise Move.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. I'm always excited to talk about real estate investing. It legitimately gives me energy, and I would talk about it to anyone, anytime. So I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, that's so great. And I did want to dive in with you and give you a chance to share with our audience just a little bit about your background and what brought you to this point in real estate, and just to get to know you better as a person, both on the real estate side and maybe personally, that you can share. So tell us a little bit about what brought you into this present point.
Sure. And I think there's a good bridge of how my personality led me to real estate. I think one of the biggest traits I have is I'm a gamer at heart. I started playing chess at the age of 5. I was pretty highly ranked in that throughout my childhood. I did competitive debate in high school and college, got a scholarship for that. And I've just always had a love for games. I have a very strategic way of thinking. I think this is how I was wired. And so in my mid-20s, I got into teaching and coaching debate, but I always had an interest in finance, in personal finance. I saw my parents retire around that time. And so as I was entering the workforce, they were exiting. And the thought occurred to me, as it does to most, that I was about to do this for the next 40 years of my life. And I was like, that's a really long time. Just thinking about retirement and what that means and what it means to build a career. So I got really interested in personal finance and also investing, budgeting, having savings set aside, what to do with that savings, how do I start building wealth. And at one point, I had a friend who bought his first home pretty young, about 25 years old. And he said that he was listening to a podcast about real estate investing. And I was like 26, 27 at the time. And I thought, real estate investing, like, we're so young. What do you mean you're going to own rental properties? That thought literally had not crossed my mind. It was one of those brain expanding moments of, I guess we could own rental properties. There's no law against it. There's no age limit, maybe 18, but I was well past that. And so I started to really get into it a lot more and listen more and research and, okay, how does this work? And that eventually led me to doing my first deal, which was house hacking. I bought a duplex. I went from renting an apartment to now being a homeowner, buying a duplex, living in one side and renting out the other. And that's what kicked everything off for me getting into real estate.
That's amazing. I love that strategy part of it. My son-in-law loves Monopoly. And I keep telling him, you should get into investments. That's just like a bigger game of it and version of it. But that whole chess and strategy, and even the component of debate, you're constantly trying to look for all of that kind of competitiveness and strategy and wit and analyzing a situation. And all of that kind of comes together in both debate and in chess. So it's an interesting combination that certainly laid that groundwork for you and started. And you mentioned about your friend introducing this topic to you. So had he already been doing investments and had success from it, or was it just something he was interested in exploring himself?
So up until that point, we were very much in the mindset of invest in mutual funds, have retirement accounts, pretty standard personal finance stuff that you'd find from Dave Ramsey or Benjamin Graham, like all the classics of wealth building. And that's when we started to get more interested in real estate. And I guess that was the strategy piece I may not have explained, is I was like, okay, what's the best strategy to build wealth? And
Yeah.
that's where I figured out or believed that real estate is the best way. But at the time, I think he just had the townhome that he lived in. He ended up buying a few multifamily properties after that. I think his first rental was a single family townhome, and then he bought a quadplex, and then he bought a pad split, and then another quadplex, and then he had kids and sold a bunch of those. So he's
Yeah.
had his own
Yeah.
journey as well.
But that's so fascinating. And so the whole house hacking terminology and what that involves for most of us, that's a new language. And we hear about home investments or maybe house flips, but the whole house hacking, can you describe that a little bit more? I mean, what all is involved in that and what was maybe your first house hack experience? Can you elaborate more on
I
that?
would love to. And I think this is something that I should say people get confused about when they're like, I like real estate, but what is house hacking? What is flipping? I hear about Airbnb. They get confused very quickly. And my advice would be learn a little bit about the different strategies and just figure out the one that you want to do. You don't have to do all of them. In fact, that's probably a bad idea to try to do everything. But house hacking, simply put, is buying a property that you're going to live in and you're also going to generate some rental income from it. So the simplest way is to buy a multifamily property because you can live in one unit and rent out the others. But it could also be buying a property that has a guest house. It could be buying a property that has a basement with a kitchenette and you rent out the basement to someone. It could even just be like buying a 4-bedroom house and renting out a couple rooms to friends, strangers. As long as your primary residence is generating income, that would fit the definition of house hacking. And the idea behind it is that for almost every person under the age of 40, our number one expense is housing. Whether that's rent or a mortgage payment, if you break down your budget on a monthly basis, your number one expense by far is going to be the cost of living. So if you can cut that in half or reduce it at all, it can make a really big difference in savings. And so just to give some brief numbers on the first deal that I did, I got very lucky in a lot of ways. And this was back in 2019. So got lucky with the timing.
Yeah.
But I bought a duplex where my mortgage payment for the whole property with principal, interest, taxes, insurance, my whole monthly payment was $1,300. And I was getting $1,150 in rent from the other side. So I was almost living for free. And I got to do that for years.
I have had clients before where they're bachelors, they start out, they buy a home and they're willing to rent out those extra bedrooms. And then that is paying their mortgage and they're going along that stream of income until, of course, some of them got married and then that quickly changed the scope of it. But that concept, like you said, of almost having your entire living cost covered just with that, and that's going against that principal and interest on that property is amazing. What, if anything, what were some of the lessons that you learned? Maybe the hard lessons, maybe one thing that stood out to you that was like, I didn't realize this was something that was going to happen and it was positive. But what are some of the lessons that maybe you've learned even as you did that house hacking?
There are so many. I will say that real estate is one of those things that I had been listening to podcasts and reading books for a year. So I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. It seems to really make sense. You will never learn everything you need to know just from talking to other people or using those resources. At some point, you have to just jump in and get the experience. And it's hard to almost think back to my mindset back then and what I knew and didn't know. But I know a couple things. One, when I bought that first property, there was tenants in both sides, and we had to move into one of them because we got a loan for a primary residence. I legally had to move into it. And so we had to get one of the tenants out. We didn't evict them. Their lease was coming up and we said, okay, we're not going to renew the lease. And they were not happy about that, which I probably wouldn't be either. And there was this whole dispute about them having installed flooring in the unit. And they were trying to get the previous owner to pay for it. And the previous owner said, I didn't make you put that flooring in. You chose to do that. I'm not paying for it. So they had some whole dispute going on. And then when I came into the picture and they had to leave, they were like, we're not leaving. And if we do, we're going to rip the flooring out and take it with us. I'm just like, here I am, 20-something-year-old guy, just bought his first property. And I'm like, please don't do that.
Don't take my flooring.
I don't
Yeah.
know what you're going to do
Yeah.
with it. It was like the stick-on
Yeah.
LVP. So I'm not sure if that can be reused.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to
Yeah.
deal with it either way. And so I had to work my way through that and all kinds of other stuff. But that was probably the first one that came up.
That was probably a little traumatic. Now, as you've been in real estate long enough, all of these, you understand it probably a little bit more. And there's so much of the what you don't know that you don't know. And when you're first entering it, and like you said, you sometimes just need to jump in and do it. We read so much. And but what within that would you say, like for the average person, hey, I'm considering this. What's the best steps to go about it? Because obviously there is some preparation that should take place within that and understanding. So what do you think are the first steps before they jump into that? And then how would you guide them on finding a good deal within that?
Those are great questions. And I could probably go for way too long on that. But to
Yeah.
give like a brief overview, one is just really understanding the position that you're in. Where are you living right now? What's your current expense? How much money do you have to invest in real estate? Just getting crystal clear about your own situation. Step two is figuring out what strategy do you want to do? Do you want to house hack? Do you want to buy a place that you could live in and rent part of it out? Do you want to do a flip? Do you want to get into Airbnb? And I think the biggest thing there is just follow your heart. You can make money in all of these categories, but you want to execute well. If you're doing Airbnb, you want to be one of the best Airbnbs on the site. Have fun with the design, make it very unique, give it a theme. And I think the people that will do the best job of that are the people that love doing it. So follow your heart with the strategy you want to go after. From there, it's just kind of fine tuning and figuring out the pieces. So I guess I can talk about my experience as some sort of guidance there. I knew I wanted a duplex. I knew I wanted to house hack. My job was like all around North Metro Atlanta. So I wasn't super tied to a location. I was like, I don't have to be in an exact city. I just want a duplex where I can live on one side and rent out the other. And that kind of guided me. So I think it's just being clear on what does your own path look like. You don't have to do what worked for someone else. You can use that as a guideline, but just figure out what you want your own journey to look like and just take one step in the right direction. If you can get one property that's making you money, if you can do one flip, if you can do one house hack, like real estate is a very slow game, right? It's like that first deal that I didn't do another deal for 2 years and it felt like a long time. It was a really good step in the right direction for me. I got my first property with 2 units. We still have that property. It still makes us money every single month. But it's just have patience that it's going to be a slow game. Just get that first deal. Just focus on that first step.
And I think within that too, understanding when you went into this, was it cash? Was it lending? Was it a combination? It obviously, if you're doing the house hacking, it's your primary residence. Airbnb might be something different unless you're renting out a portion of your space. But for someone in a primary residence, house hacking, is that a little bit more economical? Is that easier because of the rates and all of that? Or what did you find in your personal experience? Is that why you chose house hacking first?
That was part of it for sure, because I was quote unquote throwing away money on rent. I think that phrase is a little strong, but in some sense, it's like if you own a home, you're building equity. If you rent, you don't get that money back. So I wanted to get out of renting. I wanted to become a homeowner. But I think, if you can, let me put it this way. Buying a home as a primary residence is a cheat code. I think a lot of people that are just getting started in real estate don't realize that if you buy a property as a primary residence, you are given so many advantages versus an investor. Specifically, you can put a lot less money down. You can do 5%, 3%, 0% sometimes, and you get a better rate. If you buy something as a pure investment property, you probably have to put at least 20% down and your interest rate's going to be a little bit higher. There's no real upside to buying it as an investment. The only reason would be if you can't or don't want to move into it. So I think starting with a primary residence is a great way to start. And even if someone has a primary residence, go buy another one. If you're okay with moving, I think I call this house stacking. Buy a primary residence. After a couple years, maybe you get married, maybe you have a kid, maybe you're making a little bit more money now, and you're able to buy something a little bit bigger. Keep the first one as a rental. I have so many friends and clients that are doing this, and I'm like, look, I'd love to sell your house and make an extra commission, but I think the wisest thing you can do is keep that first one and just go upgrade your primary. Now you get to utilize all those benefits of putting less money down, getting a better rate, but still keep that first one as a rental property. And I have a lot of clients that own 2 to 3 properties doing this.
Mike, if you have a client and you've advised them, hey, just keep this home and move up to the second, how are they able to manage that? What do they need to do? Are they pulling money out of that current home? I know there's a couple of different options, but maybe you can explain that whole process for how you did it or how you've seen others do it that might be helpful for those of us that have not done that before.
Sure. So there are some times where you can pull out equity from the first one to go buy the second. It's tricky for a lot of reasons. The way you get that money, you're telling the bank that I'm going to continue living here, but that's really not your intention. Your intention is to go buy a new home. So that gets complicated. You might not have enough equity to pull out yet. So I honestly haven't seen many clients go that route. More often, they'll save up enough to have a down payment for the next home. But again, we're talking like 3 to 5%. It's not 20% on each house. So typically, they're buying the first home, let's say 5% down. They're buying something within their budget, living below their means. It's not like they're maxing out as much as they can afford. Live there for a couple years, hopefully career's going, get a promotion or two. And then when it comes time, they have some savings to go put, let's say, 5% down on the next one. And that first loan just stays in place. It's not like they have to change it to an investor loan or the interest rate changes. This is the beauty of the 30-year fixed loan. It's fixed 30 years. So as long as you don't refinance or change anything about that, your mortgage payment will stay the same. And then you can go buy the next one and get a new mortgage on that.
Yeah, how many times, like in your path, have you done the house hack? Have you done any other? So have you done the Airbnb? How many different areas have you yourself personally done?
So we did the house hack in 2019. We renovated the property in 2021 because it really needed it. And then also in 2021, we bought another house hack. So we just were like, this went so well, let's rinse and repeat. And we went and bought another one across town, moved into that, and just kept the first as a rental and renovated that one as well. So we had the 4 units all renovated, all rented out, like up and running. And then, funny enough, you mentioned earlier that if you're married and whatnot, have a family, it might be harder to house hack. We got married, and my wife was like, I'm tired of living in 900 square feet, and I was a little bit too. So I said, okay, we'll get the 2-story house and whatnot. So we bought a new construction home, a little bit less of an investment, but also all real estate can be a good investment. So moved into that. So we've got the 2 duplexes fully rented out. And then earlier this year, we decided to do our first fix and flip. And we just closed on that last week.
Yeah. And how have you found like the current market, like for interest rates, for what's available? How challenging has that been? 2019 to now, what have you seen the differences?
It is challenging. All the above is. It's harder to find rentals that make sense because the interest rates and the prices are a lot higher, so your mortgage payment is a lot higher. So in a lot of cases, you'll be lucky to be breaking even. There's a lot of properties you could go buy today as a rental that would lose $1,000 a month. It just doesn't make sense. So it's a lot harder to find. The flips are a little bit trickier just because selling is a little bit more challenging right now. So across the board, it has become a little bit more difficult, but there's always silver linings to that, right? That also means that you have more leverage as a buyer. It means that you can be more patient. It means that there's more inventory out there to choose from. Someone else originally said this, I forget who, but they put it really well. They were like, if you're waiting for the perfect environment that has low housing prices and low interest rates and no competition, you're the only one buying real estate, that's never going to come. Because if the prices come down, there's more competition. If the prices go up, it's like you kind of have to pick your battles and just say, okay, what are the pros, what are the cons, and how can I best navigate this market that I'm in? And even when we did our first flip at the beginning of the year, there was people saying, "Oh, it's such a bad time to do that. Oh, the rates are so high. Oh, you're going to have trouble selling it." But it was something we wanted to do. We did the best we could at every step of the process. We said, "How do we best renovate this property? How do we get a hard money loan? Let's just figure this out." And it was very successful. It was a great first flip. We made money. We learned a bunch of lessons. So although the market is challenging, I don't want people to get discouraged by that, and like, just again, do what you want to do, follow your heart. If there's something that's you think would be a good idea, go after it, because there's always going to be people succeeding.
And how, if you're looking at a property, when you and your wife or whatever are considering a property for investment, what's the criteria that you go, hey, this should have this? Are there like several areas of criteria that you measure against to see is it a good deal? And what are those?
Yeah, great question. So with rentals, like when I'm house hacking or buying a multifamily, the way I think about all of this is just ROI, return on investment, because my money could go anywhere. And I have some stocks. Sometimes I put money in a high yield savings account. Like, there's a lot of different ways to turn your money into more money. And so if I'm putting it in a real estate deal, I have to consider that money could be in the stock market. That money could be in Bitcoin. And so I got to make sure that I'm getting a return that makes it worthwhile, because it's way easier to put my money in the stock market than to go find a new house to buy and do all of that. So when I'm buying a rental property, there's three types of return that I look at. The first is going to be cash flow, which is just what's my monthly profit, right? If my mortgage is $2,000 and the rent is $3,000, maybe add a little bit more for some repairs. Maybe I'm cash flowing $500, $800 a month. So that's the first thing I'm going to look at and try to calculate. The second is going to be paying down the loan, right? We can sit there and look at a mortgage calculator and see how much of the principal will be paid down after that first year. And then the third is appreciation. And that's the one that's hardest to guess. We never know how much the market is going to go up or down in a given year. But historically, homes in the US go up about 4% a year. So I have a spreadsheet that kind of helps me with all this. I don't sit there and write it all out by hand, but it basically helps me calculate what's the monthly cash flow, what's the principal pay down, and what's my estimated appreciation. And then I add those up and say, okay, if I'm putting, I'll just say $100,000 for round numbers. If I'm putting that in and I'm making $20,000 a year, that's a 20% return. That's a really good return, right? That's hard to find somewhere else. So I try to get it all down to a number that I can compare and make it apples to apples.
It sounds like the real estate investment, is that a pretty big portion of your business, or would you say that's your personal kind of side hustle, so to speak, that you do? Or are you really also, that's the main part of your business and you're coaching people through it, you're helping them find that investment property? What does that look like for you, Mike Lacey, in the real estate world?
It is not my main business. After I bought that first property, I fell in love with real estate and I didn't have any money left.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I gotta earn a living, but I love real estate. And I got my license after that and became a realtor and went in full time from day one. And so my main business since then has been helping people buy and sell real estate. But I absolutely bring all of that knowledge to my clients. And some of them are flipping houses, but a lot of them are just, they're 33 and they're ready to buy their first property, and we want to make sure that it's a good investment as well as something that's going to fit their lifestyle. And so I think a lot of the people that I work with do appreciate that, and that we can really connect over that. But yeah, the thing I spend most of my time on is being an agent and helping people buy and sell.
And your background, you have a Bachelor of Science in Economics. How valuable has that been to this whole journey? And if you were to go back in time and start back over, would you have done anything different? Or would you say, no, the path that I had and even that degree have really been instrumental in shaping what I'm able to bring to my clients and who I am as an agent?
I think the degree helps. I think
Hmm.
as in most things in life, what matters most is just your actual knowledge of the thing you're doing. Someone could get a degree in computer science, or someone could go to a boot camp and learn how to code and just practice a lot and really love it and get really good at it. So I think we live in a world where talent is rewarded and skill is rewarded. So I think for anyone, it's like whatever you want to do, just practice it and get good at it. I think the degree did help. If I could do it again, though, I would probably get a degree in finance. I would
Mm.
shift it a little bit because I think that's a little
Yeah.
bit more employable if I ever had to
Yeah.
fall back on a 9 to 5.
Yeah, especially though in the world of investments, you're strategizing within that financially, looking at a lot of numbers, not just running quick comps and values for a client, but for yourself personally to see that ROI and to determine that value and all the investment. That's a lot. That's a lot in the world of finance. So it definitely plays in that. So, what year specifically did you jump in to real estate?
In 2019, I bought that first
Okay.
property in June, and then I took some time getting my license because I
Yeah.
was still working full time. So I did that in the second half of the year. And then
Okay.
I think it was like January 3rd, 2020. I was like, all right, I'm joining a team. I'm all in. Left my previous job, like that
Yeah.
career ended, and was like, okay, let's go for it. And then, as we all know, a couple months later,
Yeah.
there was
The
a
whole
big
world
surprise
stopped.
waiting for me.
Yeah. So I can't even imagine. I had already been in real estate enough to see the market before because 2020, I cannot imagine stepping into that, into it because that March of that year, we were going to closings and it was rapidly changing with how we did closings and how we showed homes and all of that. So you really came into just a huge shift in all of that. And did you feel like it took you longer then to get your grounding into the real estate world, or how was that adjustment for you?
It was a little bit of a setback. You probably know extremely well that there's real estate takes time. If you have a deal that closes today, you might have started working on that deal 6 months ago, possibly when you first came into contact with someone. So when I started in January, I was cold calling, I was hosting open houses, I was doing all the things that you're supposed to do to get clients. And I was finally starting to get some traction around March and April. And so
Yeah.
I had like just started to get my first few listings, and then the sellers called me up, hey, I think I'm going to wait and see what's going on here. So it
Yeah.
definitely set me back and I had to reset. And then I
Yeah.
didn't have my first closing until June. So I went 6 months
Wow.
of not
Wow.
making any money, but working every day, like as hard as I
Yeah.
could. The good news is the market turned around and was way stronger than before. So I ended
Yeah.
up I still had a very good first year. It just all happened in the second half of the year.
Yeah, which was, I'm sure, very concerning when you started out. And fortunately for you, I imagine some of your home investments were at least underway or well grounded. So that was a good basis because I think a lot of people they don't understand the world of real estate that we do. You don't get compensated until that deal closes. And you are a business owner, you own all the cost of getting them there. You're not making a base salary plus commissions. You're making a portion of what's left over at the end of that sale once you've paid all the business expenses, the brokerage expenses. Because there is a lot, I will have friends reach out and say, I'm thinking of getting into real estate and or investment or real estate, and it looks easy. We see some of the reality TV shows and it looks like you just open a door and here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom, and sign the paper, and they never hear from us again, and we get a huge check at the end. And it's so different than that behind the scenes. And so going through that, you really have to be prepared financially and having good solid resources to fall back on, because like you said, it could take 6 months, 12 months. Sometimes we're working with a client over a year, and it's just a time process within that, and there's nothing coming until that closing is signed and sealed and delivered. And even then, everyone has a portion out. Our taxes are higher as a business owner, all of the fees that we have to pay to market the home. There's a lot that goes into it. And so for that, having a good groundwork of investment property or something else was probably a good, I would imagine, stabilizing impact for you. at that point, especially as you hit COVID. I just hats off to you for surviving that, because so many realtors don't make it beyond the first 5, 6 months or even a year. And you came into it at one of the most difficult times. But then you secured your level as a top producer, which obviously speaks to how you treat your clients and how you view them. Are most of your clients, are they word of mouth? How do you get most of your clients? What kind of advertising or other things have you found helpful to grow to the level that you have?
It's mostly word of mouth and referrals. I have a great network of people just having grown up here, went to Chattahoochee High School, University of Georgia, met a lot of great people along the way, and I've been very fortunate to have a great network of people. I always supplement that with, I'll get some clients from social media. I was doing a lot of TikTok last year. I have done my fair share of cold calling. Not too much anymore. I've put those days
Yeah.
behind me. But the majority of it has been from referrals.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to you as an agent, because they obviously loved the experience they had with you. And whether they already knew you well or not, it's sometimes people are hesitant to go into a transaction with someone they know or a family member. And so when they go through that and they really had a good experience, to share that out is pretty valuable within that. So that's amazing. What is your next vision as far as investment? What do you see on the horizon for you personally with exploring?
So I touched that I first got into real estate because I wanted passive income. I wanted to retire early. I wanted to get to a point where I could just live off the rental income from my properties. 5 years in, I realized how much real estate you need to get there.
Yeah.
And it's a long grind. I still love it, but I've shifted my focus a little bit more towards active income, towards growing a business, and just really capitalizing on that opportunity to grow a business. So I mentioned my wife and I did our first flip. We're now looking for our second one. I don't think we're going to turn that into a major business, but just have one going at all times. We really enjoy that. She loves design. I love the numbers and the game of finding a deal. So we make a really good team with that. But I'm really also just focusing on growing my business as an agent. I've started investing in a lot more marketing this year, sending out mail, doing more promoted posts on social media. So that's what I'm doing right now, and we'll hopefully be able to grow my business that way. We'll see.
Yeah. And the market has shifted. We see it all the time. I'll have clients say, "Hey, what does it look like?" And you could say, "Oh, it looks pretty good today." And all of a sudden a week later there's some new shift, whether it's a change politically, economically, and instantly the market freezes, and we see within days all of a sudden listings are stalling and it's changing. So I feel like it's been such a roller coaster, even coming off of COVID, where everything, we just had that kind of rebound from that, where we just saw homes selling so quickly and for such a high number. And now we don't have that quite as much. So we're gauging it day by day. But in your area, are you focused in one area of Atlanta, or how broadly do you go outside of the Atlanta metro
Pretty broad.
area?
I go where people take me. I think the craziest story with that is I had an old college friend who really wanted a farm. And so we were trying to find something with 10 acres, under $250,000, with a house on it, anywhere in
Yeah.
Georgia. And I was like, all
Yeah.
right, let's see. And we found a couple that looked promising. I spent 8 hours on a Saturday looking at two houses. That's how far out they were. And one of them was perfect. And he bought that house. We even negotiated an albino peacock in the deal. It was hilarious. But
Yeah.
he's super happy there. That's the farthest one I've done. Other than that, it's usually within an hour of the metro. So I just sold a house in Cumming. That's probably the farthest out. And then a lot in the
Yeah.
suburbs, a little bit in the city as well.
Yeah. Do you have a niche area, an area that you go, this is my neighborhood or my specialty, or are you really just wherever your clients, your friends are, you go?
Up until now, it's been all over. The area that I'm starting to focus on a lot more is Cobb County, and specifically
Okay.
East Cobb. We live in Cobb County. We have multiple properties here. We just did our first flip in East Cobb, and I love that area. It's got great schools. It's
Yeah.
very accessible to everything. It also, my wife is Brazilian, and that's where a lot of Brazilians live, just
That's
coincidentally.
amazing. Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
Brazilian restaurants and stuff. So it just checks a lot of those boxes. I really like that area, and that's where I've
Yeah.
been focusing on a lot more.
That's awesome. Mike, this time with you has been so valuable. I'd love to invite you back again at another time to even talk more in depth with this real estate investment, because I think there's so much to this. It's such an interest point for people. It's that they want to do it, and yet how do we do it? And just getting the confidence to, like you said, you've just got to jump in at some point and do it. So I'd love to have you on. Where though can like guests find you typically, or where can other people reach out to you? Where are you most at right now on social media or otherwise?
Sure, yeah, best places are Instagram and TikTok, and I'm at Real Mike Lacey on both of those.
Okay, that's great. I think a lot of clients that have questions should reach out to you. I think what you've done, both personally and then in business wise, is a great move for people that are really looking to take that action into the real estate investment world. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it and look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you for having me, Meredith. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it, and I hope we get to do it again soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for tuning in to Wise Move. I hope today's episode provided you with the tools and insights you need to confidently navigate your real estate, community, and life journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and please share this podcast with friends and family who are making their own moves. Stay connected for more real estate insights, and remember, every great move starts with a wise move.